Welcome to this Wood Solutions presentation on the timber selection process in AS 3959, construction of buildings in bushfire prone areas. There is a three-step process for compliance with AS 3959. Step 1 is to determine the site's bushfire attack level. Usually a trained assessor is required for this. Step 2 is to comply with the restrictions on building envelope elements for the design BAL. And step 3 is to choose the correct timbers for the required element performance. In this presentation, we will assume that the BAL is provided. External elements that may have material and construction restrictions on them under the standard include building subfloors that are either open or enclosed, stair decks and ramps, external wall surfaces. These have separate provisions for surfaces that are less than 400 millimetres above an external surface and those that are above this line, this 400 millimetre line. External windows and doors, including the glazing, window frames and any fire shutters. And for areas in the roof, including the roof surface, the soffites, the eaves, the fascias and the gutters. Under AS 3959, timber is classified by fire resistance, and its use in particular applications is determined by this classification. The resistance is classified by timber species and it's based on density. There are four basic groupings. The first is bushfire resistant timber. Then, species with a density greater than 750 kilograms a cubic metre at 12% moisture content. The next is species with densities greater than 650 kilograms a cubic metre. And lastly, there is other species. Bushfire resisting timber may be bushfire resisting due to either the natural properties of the material or to impregnation of the timber with fire retardant chemicals or the application of some fire retardant coatings. Fire retardant treatments and coatings are specialist products, and test results for these products should be sought from the supplier. We will not be covering treated material in this presentation. Naturally bushfire resisting timber species are listed in Appendix H of the standard. They include blackbutt, quila or merbau, red ironbark, river red gum, silvertop ash, spotted gum and turpentine. These species all have very low heat release when tested for burning. The next classification is timber with a density of greater than 750 kilograms per cubic metre. These timbers are listed in Table E1 in Appendix E of the standard, and they include all the bushfire resisting timbers mentioned above, and additional species such as jarrah, messmate, mountain grey gum, Sydney blue gum and Tasmanian blue gum. The next classification is timber with a density of greater than 650 kilograms per cubic metre. These are listed in Table E2 of the standard and include the bushfire resisting timbers and other species listed in Appendix E1, plus additional lower density species such as alpine ash, slash pine, mountain ash, shining gum and cypress. The last grouping is timbers that are not listed in either Appendix E or H of the standard. These are low density species that include radiata pine, western red cedar and similar species. To see how these groupings and the standards requirements interact, we will look at four examples using the Wood Solution Design Guide 4, Building with Timber in Bushfire Prone Areas. The first example is looking at timber used internally in any BAL. Timber can be used without restriction in any BAL in any application where the timber is protected from exposure to bushfire attack. This includes use in house framing, internal flooring, internal joinery or lining, or areas protected by bushfire resistant linings. The second example is for timber decking in a BAL 12.5 area. BAL 12.5 sites have a risk of ember attack and a low risk of building fire from bushfires. All traditional timber framing and external products and systems can be used, but there are some restrictions on elements within 400 millimetres of the ground or a horizontal surface. Looking at the information listed in the guide, we can see that timber decking can be used in a veranda or decks without restriction if it is more than 300 millimetres from glazing. If the decking is less than 300 millimetres from glazing, timber species from Appendix 1 with a density greater than 750 kilograms per cubic metre is required. This includes all bushfire resisting timbers and species with a density of greater than 750 kilograms per cubic metre, such as jarrah. Other design options are also available. The guide shows an option where tiles are used in the area within 300 millimetres of the glazing. The next example is for a timber wall cladding in a BAL 19 area. BAL 19 sites have a risk of ember attack and a moderate risk of building fire from bushfires. Generally, all timber solutions for a BAL 12.5 site are applicable for BAL 19. However, there are restrictions for cladding lower than 400 millimetres from an external surface. Again, timber species from Appendix E1 with a density greater than 750 kilograms per cubic metre or better is required. Other options are listed as well. The last example is for a timber window in a BAL 29 area. BAL 29 areas have an increased risk of ember attack and a high risk of building fires from bushfires. Naturally, bushfire resisting timbers and fire retardant treated timbers are the only timbers to be used for exposed applications. In this BAL, timber can be used without restrictions for windows or doors if they are completely protected externally by a complying screen. As the screen protects the windows, they are not exposed. If the screens are not there to protect the timber, the windows or doors have to be a bushfire resisting timber species. Glazing constraints also apply. So, in summary, AS 3959 identifies building elements in the external envelope that are a high risk of catching fire under each bushfire attack level. It requires that only timber with the specified fire resistance is used in these elements. The standard lists the fire resistance of species in tables and appendices and details where the timber in each table can be used.